How does it save the salmon to eat more of them? That's what I don't understand. The wild salmon. He's saying only eat wild salmon. Don't eat farm salmon. Every farm salmon you eat saves a wild salmon.
That was Dr. Patrick Moore yesterday making the case for salmon farms. It's an obvious case. I mean, if we only ate wild food, well, we'd be out of those wild animals pretty quick. Think of buffalo versus the number of cattle we have. Well, today, Dr. Moore was on the streets of Toronto talking about another food, a food that we don't eat luxuriously, but a food that could make a difference between life and death. I'm talking about golden rice. We went into great detail about it on yesterday's show, how the rice becomes golden because the beta-carotene, the vitamin A gene from corn, is put in the rice. It's not just for aesthetic effect, it's to save lives. Millions of people around the world die because of a lack of vitamin A. First they go blind and then they die. And today, Dr. Moore was outside Greenpeace's headquarters demanding that Greenpeace stop its opposition to vitamin A golden rice. And joining me in studio to talk about this now is our friend Laurie Goldstein. Hey, Laurie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I love Patrick Moore because he's got that idealistic passion of, you could tell he was there in the early days of Greenpeace, sailing out to confront the U.S. military, sailing out to stop the whaling ships. He still has that when he talks about things that he thinks are so unscientific that the environmental movement has caught on to.
He also has a science background.
Well, he's a PhD in ecology.
Unlike many members of Greenpeace. Yeah. And, you know, it is, what it seems to me, his break with Greenpeace, he has called them anti-human. On the issue of golden rice, he has suggested that they should perhaps be tried at an international court for crimes against humanity. Now, I think that's extreme, but the fact is that Greenpeace has successfully delayed the widespread dispersal of golden rice since it was invented by Swiss scientists in 1998. And environmentalists like Moore, and after all, he is an environmentalist, accuse Greenpeace of therefore being responsible in some way for millions of children going blind in the third world and nearly half of them dying. It's a pretty serious issue.
Well, we had Dr. Moore on the show yesterday for the whole show. It was great. And this morning, he used that old Greenpeace tactic of, unfurling a banner against Greenpeace itself at the Greenpeace headquarters. And about golden rice. And of course, he's got that website, which we showed yesterday, allowgoldenricenow.org. We've got some footage from the street protest today. It's instructive the way Greenpeace responded. They didn't try to debate him. They didn't try and talk science. They did what David Suzuki does. They went personal with weird ad hominem arguments. Here's a clip of how Greenpeace responded to Dr. Moore's pro-GMO protests on their doorstep today.
So first, let me just correct, he's not a founder of Greenpeace. He was one of the first people in Greenpeace and one of the first presidents of Greenpeace, but not the founders. There were a group of people that were the founders.
Yeah, I mean, so there he is. Dr. Moore's talking about golden rice, talking about saving hundreds of thousands of lives, talking about how GMO food has been proven by every authority you can think of to be safe. And what does Greenpeace have to say? Oh, he's not for real. He never. I mean, it's a weird personal.
Well, it's also, Moore has never said he was the founder. He has said he was a co-founder.
Yeah.
And from that description, he was a co-founder. He was a very early part of a group of people who founded Greenpeace. But this is what, this is an old argument. You can't attack the argument, so smear the person.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that used in debate, ad hominem attacks. Yeah. But on the issue, the reason Greenpeace doesn't want to debate the issue is that it's a bad issue for them.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have things like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation urging this, you know how Greenpeace always says we should observe the science on climate change?
Yeah.
On this one, all the science academies are against them.
Yeah.
All of them are saying this can save lives.
Yeah.
And look, can we guarantee anything is 100% safe all the time? You can't guarantee anything.
Yeah,
but
water.
by all the scientific markers, this is safe. It's not frankenfood. It's a way to save the lives of millions of people in the third world. And Greenpeace's arguments are, well, you shouldn't make them so dependent on one food. They're dependent on rice anyway.
Yeah.
They should have vitamin supplements and grow other vegetables in their gardens. It's like they're talking about a rich part of Toronto.
Yeah.
This is the third world.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is where rice is the staple food. And the problem is they don't get one of the vitamins necessary for good health from the rice. And altruistic scientists have come up with a way to do that. And yet they tore up the experimental fields in the Philippines. They are identified for the past 15 years as being the main organization that has blocked the development and expansion. And then they say it hasn't worked. Well, it hasn't worked because of what you've done. So what I would say to Greenpeace is, what are the circumstances under which you would approve of golden rice? And the answer is there are no circumstances.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to them what the facts are.
Yeah, you're right. You know, it's interesting. Yesterday I learned from Dr. Moore that even the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, which I rail against because they hate the oil sands, even they say, how can you get in the way of feeding? And it's not even just feeding. It's not like these folks are starving. It's that they're malnourished. They don't get vitamin A. So first they go blind, and then they die.
Their immune system.
And it is so easy to solve, and for Greenpeace to stand that way
But the environmental movement has done this over and over again.
That's the anti-human angle that Moore talks about.
DDT, correctly opposed by the environmental movement in North America because it was being overused and killing like birds and plants. But in Africa, properly used, it was a lifesaver for malaria. But they made it so difficult for DDT to be sold anywhere that millions of people die in Africa from malaria. The UN has said it. Some of the world's leading environmentalists, James Lovelock, the founder of the Gaia theory, says how he asks of the environmental movement of which he is beloved, how could you have done that? It's the same with the development of fossil fuels in Africa. If you don't let these countries develop the way we did, climate change is one issue, but we know for a fact that if you don't let them use their fossil fuel resources, they will remain poor and they will die earlier.
Well, that's a form of green imperialism. This rich white guy in Toronto telling poor brown people in the third world, you can starve because I'm not hungry. Lori, great to see you again. Folks,